please join Juliana Giddings as she leads us in a responsive reading of our covenant.
In devotion to the truth, searching along many spiritual paths, we honor the living legacy of our faith in the human potential for goodness and in the God of limitless love, in whom we are one. We unite in faith to celebrate the sacred as it reveals itself within and among us, to promote spiritual growth and to serve those who need, to honor and protect the natural world, which inspires wonder and sustains life, to walk together in peace, committed to justice and compassion in our world.
One of the most common conversations in my household goes like this. Mom, where's my... fill in the blank with other sock, backpack, DS charger, library book, you name it. To which I reply each and every time, where did you leave it? I recently discovered how thin this was wearing when my 8-year-old, for a change, asked his father where something was, to which his father replied, I don't know, did you ask your mother? To which my son replied, no, because I know what she's going to say. As irksome as they can be, these requests make us parents exalted in a way. We are assumed to possess some greater knowledge that will magically make those lost things found. When they're found, of course, material things pick right up where they left off in our lives. They go back to being in service of our use in whatever way we planned, as if they were never gone. The dynamics of lost and found aren't as straightforward in the realm of the spirit, though. In the spiritual life, we know that that admonition of the Zen teacher is true. Wherever you go, there you are. The deepest parts of us become known in different ways in the dance of the days of our lives. We like to think that there's something abiding and true that remains the same, but we discover it from different angles, as surfaces refract the light in new ways with each twist and turn of our journey. We take on new experiences and shrug off old chapters. We lose and find ourselves in faith over and over again. 50 years ago on this day, the Unitarian Universalist Association and the Universalist Church of America merged. Two distinct denominations that had been moving further and further away from their mainline Protestant roots joined their futures this day. There were many fears on both sides that much would be lost, but greater was the hope that something new and more wonderful would emerge. It turns out that both the fear and the hope have been realized. We know in our material life as well as our spiritual lives that our fear of loss is always mixed up with our hope for a new discovery. Sometimes we arrive at found without too much loss, when we first fall in love or graduate from kindergarten. Other times, the losses are the next step on the journey are great. When we leave a long tenure at a job, end a marriage, come to terms with an addiction. But rarely is the journey of our lives so clear-cut as to allow us an uncomplicated found, one that's not bound up with some loss, some grief, some letting go. When it comes to the things of the Spirit, what we're looking for is not always right where we left it. Sometimes it's in a place we never even knew existed.
John Murray benefited from great fortune. He had a fine education, a steady job, a loving wife, and a young son. Then, suddenly, everything changed. His wife and their son became sick and died. John lost his job, all his money, and was put in jail because he could not pay his bills. He felt his life was over. Friends urged him to go someplace where he could start again. So John boarded a brig called the Hand in Hand, hoping to lose himself in America. One night in late September, an English sea captain, confused by the heavy fog, lost his bearings while sailing along the coast of New Jersey and nearly ran ashore. The following morning, with the aid of a high tide, the captain was able to return to sea, but the wind suddenly changed and banked the boat. John and a few others volunteered to leave the ship, go on land, and get directions and supplies. As he was walking ashore, John saw a farmhouse with a small chapel. Beside it, it belonged to Thomas Potter, who greeted John with the words,
"My friend, I am glad you have come. I have longed to see you. I have been expecting you for a long time."
It soon became evident to John that his newfound friend and host, though an illiterate man, possessed an alert and thoughtful mind. At his own expense, and partially with his own hands, Thomas erected a church, which he opened to all denominations, but dedicated to none. For he steadfastly affirmed that God would sometimes send a messenger of the true gospel. Years passed by, and the common taunt, "Thomas Potter, where is your preacher?" was still answered by the old man of spirit and tranquil faith.
"He will, by and by, make an appearance."
Thomas told John his story and more.
"When I saw the brig this morning in Cranberry Inlet yonder, a voice seemed to speak audibly to me, saying, 'There, Potter, in yonder vessel is the preacher you have long since been expecting.' And when I saw you coming towards my home today, the same voice seemed to say, 'This is the man sent to preach in your house.'"
John did not want to hear this. He was not a preacher anymore, and he was determined to never preach again. Yet, Thomas seemed confident that John was the universalist preacher he waited for, and he asked John to preach on Sunday.
"I can't preach on Sunday because as soon as the wind changes, my boat will set sail, and I must be on it."
"If the boat has not sailed by Sunday, will you preach?"
"If I am still here on Sunday, I will preach."
But no wind blew, and no ship sailed. So John preached the first Universalist sermon in America on September 30th, 1770.
The sun And Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you want to come with me, you must forget yourself, carry your cross, and follow me. For if you want to save your own life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for my cause, you will find it. Will you gain anything if you win the whole world, but lose your life?"
Those of you who have seen the film Forrest Gump know how this saying ends. Life is like a box of chocolates. Help me out here. You never know what you're going to get. The corollary to that statement that Forrest's mother failed to mention is that you also never know when they're going to melt. When the chocolate that you got disappears in the heat of time. We are often as surprised by what life throws our way as we are by when life chooses to take it back. Letting go is no easy task. When I was a young child, my father took me to Chuck E. Cheese's for an afternoon of plastic balls and those creepy animated characters that didn't quite make the cut down in Disney World. The restaurant happened to be pretty busy that day, so I left my father in line to purchase the tokens while I wandered off to entertain myself by dancing. Yes, even as a child, I had really hip dance moves. A couple minutes later, I ran back to the counter. I reached up and I grabbed my father's hand. His fingers wrapped around mine and I clenched them tightly. This was going to be literally the best day of my life. As I lifted my head to see how many tokens my father had acquired, I suddenly realized that the hand I was holding did not belong to my father at all. Immediately, I let out a shriek. But I didn't let go of this stranger's hand. Instead, I hesitated, instinctively, intuitively. I knew that letting go of that hand meant risking confusion and panic. It meant risking loneliness and even abandonment. I wasn't sure it was worth it. I wasn't even sure that I could do it. Moments later, I did eventually end up releasing my hand, but only after having spotted my father coming towards me from the back of the line. Why is letting go so difficult? We all know that change is the only constant, as Heraclitus once wrote. That change alone is the way of the world. And of course, change means letting go. Our minds know that, and yet our hearts resist, because change also means loss. Letting go means losing, always, without exception. If you've been to camp, you've probably lost the comfort of your own bed. If you've parented a young adult, you've probably lost the authority to set a curfew. If you've taken care of an aging parent, you probably lost your patience at least once or twice. Most certainly, you lost your independence. These changes may sound insignificant, but I wager that they felt pretty intense. I imagine there were times when you felt disoriented, when you felt unsure about the future, when you felt out of control. I imagine there were times when you were both excited on the one hand and anxious on the other, when you were hopeful and yet also slightly confused. I imagine there were times when you felt really empty, perhaps even completely abandoned, all on your own. Change is unsettling by its very definition. It mixes things up, including our souls. As jumbled as they may feel, though, we do not lose our souls when things change. Quaker educator Parker Palmer helps us distinguish between the hidden world of the soul on the one hand and the public world of the role on the other. And in fact, what he's helping us see is that what we lose amidst change is our role. It's not our inner life, but rather our outer life, the public world of role. We don't stop being who we are deep down inside. Rather, we stop being what we are. We change our roles. We jump from being a student to being a camper. We jump from being a young parent to being an empty nester. We jump from being a child to being a caretaker. Heck, you've probably had this take place in your own life, maybe even recently, where you found yourself shifting between the different roles that you are expected to occupy. In effect, we let go of one hand only as we grasp for another. Now, if we're lucky, we've, like myself, already spotted our father who's coming towards us, which of course eases the transition in roles. In fact, you've been attending that camp for 3 years straight. You pretty much know all of the other campers by name. You know the campgrounds by heart. being away from family for a couple weeks is no longer really a big deal. But then there are the more daunting changes. Graduating high school, losing a job, moving to a new home. In the case of John Murray, as we just heard this morning, life's box of chocolates tasted delightfully sweet for a while, and then they melted all at once. His wife and their son soon became sick, and then they eventually both died. John lost his job. He lost all his money. He was put in jail because he could no longer pay his bills. Once a husband, a father, a provider, John suddenly became a widow, destitute, poor, and incarcerated. Can you imagine what that must have felt like? Can you imagine the toll, the emotional toll that must have taken on his life? He felt his life was over, we read, having nearly lost every role that was of value to him in his life. He set sail on the Hand in Hand, hoping to lose himself in America. But he couldn't. He couldn't. Not entirely, at least. He couldn't lose his soul. More than that, in losing his roles back home in England, John actually found his soul, with the help, of course, of Thomas Potter. My friend, I'm glad that you have come. I've longed to see you. I've been waiting for you for a very long time. John didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to preach. He didn't want that old role anymore. But Thomas saw something more than a role in John. I want to believe that the more Thomas learned about John's background, about his grave misfortune back in England, and yet his profound faith in the universalist God of limitless love, the more Thomas listened to John's deep pain, the more he could also hear his profound hope. It wasn't a reverend that Thomas sought. He had plenty of those. Every week, a different reverend coming in, going out of his church, preaching this or that. It wasn't a reverend that Thomas sought. It was reverence. He sought soul. When you lose what you are, you find out who you are. One of the most difficult transitions for me this year followed Parissa's return from her January sabbatical. For an entire month, I had taken on additional pastoral and organizational responsibility, getting a sense of what it would actually be like to be a senior minister. It was nerve-wracking for sure, and I can promise you there were moments of absolute panic. But I gained confidence in my ministry nevertheless, thanks in large part to the companionship of our devoted staff and some really committed lay leaders. When Parissa returned from her sabbatical, roles shifted again. Things changed. I initially felt pretty disoriented and slightly adrift. But Parissa saw something more than a role in me. She helped me discover the gifts of soul that could flourish regardless of whatever role I happened to be inhabiting at that moment in time. She helped me see how deeply I care for all of you. She helped me see how passionately I worship, how passionately I teach, how passionately I plan. She helped me see how fully I cherished the spiritual life. This, in fact, I believe, is the insight that Jesus of Nazareth had days before his own transfiguration. He took his disciples aside and said, "If you lose your life for my cause, you will find it." Put differently, life may require all of you to exchange your roles. maybe even lose the way of life that you're most used to and most comfortable in. But if you embrace this change instead of resisting it, if you see this change as an opportunity to further the cause of growing your spirit, might you not catch a glimpse of your true self in the process? Might you not catch a glimpse of that self that lies below roles, that is squeezed in between roles? The self that stands in awe of a glorious sunset. A self that speaks out for what is good and what you know deep down is true. The self that laughs hysterically with friends. A self that falls head over heels in love. Might you not catch a glimpse of your own soul? French mystic Simone Weil, one of my absolute favorites, tells us that roles belong to humanity, but souls are situated behind the curtain on the side of God. She tells us that our deepest selves are hidden from us, for they are in God. You might say they are God. When the young camper suffers from homesickness, she is in fact peeling back the curtain on her own soul. She is discovering deep within herself the sacred gift of family, what it feels like to really be cared for. She is discovering her own yearning for connection and for human relationship. When you lose what you are, you find out who you are. Now, this congregation is about to lose its life. Staff roles are changing. Our beloved seniors are about to graduate. Loving faces that are so cherished around here are going to be lost. In addition, this Leap of Faith initiative has us partnering with unfamiliar communities and taking up brand new causes that we've never really tackled before. Things will be different. I know next year things will be different. As this community lets go of one hand and reaches for another, it has a sacred opportunity, though. I really think that all of you have a sacred opportunity. Pay attention. Please pay attention. Pay attention to your concern about what the future will hold. For in that concern, you will glimpse the resiliency of this congregation's 300-year-old soul. Pay attention, too, to what excites you about the future, what brings you to life as you think about what this congregation can accomplish. For in that excitement, in that enthusiasm, you will glimpse this congregation's emerging sense of purpose and of mission. Above all, though, I encourage you to pay attention to the heartache. Pay attention to what it feels like as your heart breaks. For in that heartache, you will know that you have loved. You will know that you have been loved. You will know that you can love. And you will know that you will love again. What amazing grace that in being lost we may also be found. Thank you all for a blessed year of ministry. I love you. Amen.
See
have faith. Seasons and changing times. We are all caught in the great cycle of life, receiving undeservedly, losing unexpectedly, adjusting to new people and new places and new roles with great exhilaration and with great exhaustion. Help us to know, O Holy One, who we truly are. Connect us to our deepest selves and to one another. Let us share this morning a prayer of compassion with Paul, who is thinking of a friend who had to euthanize her dog Annie recently. Let us lift up prayers for healing and for forgiveness. Let us join with Deb in remembering an old friend who died this week. Let us also join with Anne in sharing a prayer for her children's health and safety, and for the health and safety of all our children, and for all of us. Let us join, too, in sharing a prayer of hope and of reconciliation in this tumultuous political landscape. Let us pray that there might be a greater understanding, that there might be a desire to find compromise and to make things work together. Let us also lift up a prayer of gratitude for all that has taken place this year, for the many relationships that were formed, for the laughs and the tears, for all that was ministered, all that was grown, all that was lost, and all that was found. Oh, dearly beloved, when it feels like everything is being lost, help us to find you. Help us to find ourselves in one another. Amen. There was once a pastor who had to work pretty late into the evening. It was a long day. And towards the end of the night, felt his stomach starting to grumble. So he called up a friend and asked whether his friend wanted to meet him to grab a bite to eat before he went to bed, and his friend agreed. Problem was, it was really late, and so there weren't a lot of places that were open that late at night, save for a single, grimy, smelly, sketchy dive bar. Well, what am I going to do? I'm hungry, and I want to eat. So the pastor and his friend decided that they'd go down into this dive bar, and they'd have a burger. They ordered their food. They were sitting there, about to eat. And the pastor's friend was amazed because the pastor didn't stop to say grace. And this pastor was a pretty devoted pastor. He tried to model the faith. And so his pastor's friend asked him, "Pastor, why are you not saying grace?" Pastor looked him in the eye and said, "I don't want God to know I'm here." Do you want God to know that you're here? What are the places in your life where you really want God to know that you're fully present? I pray that this might be one of them. I know it is for me. And of course, this place requires all of us and all that we have to make it the place that it is. The morning offering will now be generously given and so gratefully received. dedicating these gifts. May these gifts be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Sing it with me. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. Mix it up now. There's a river flowing in this place. There's a river flowing in this place. There's a river flowing in this place, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in this place. Last time, there's a river flowing in this faith. There's a river flowing in this faith. There's a river flowing in this faith, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in this faith. Maybe.
As we offer our formal farewell to Erik this morning, it seems appropriate to take just a few minutes to talk about the important relationship of a teaching congregation with its intern minister. Some of you are more aware than others of the lengthy process of ministerial formation that the congregation takes part in with our interns. It includes a 3-year Master of Divinity program, a 10-week clinical pastoral education program, and hospital chaplaincy, which involves a lot of deep personal development and training, a comprehensive psychological evaluation, which he passed before he came to us. He doesn't have to retake it. and the completion of an internship in a congregation. And it's this time in the congregation in which the ministerial student gets the opportunity to test out all of that theoretical knowledge, all the book learning that has come from school, and the call that they have in their hearts, the gifts that they have come, and to bring them together into fruition within a real, live congregational body. So the congregation's role in this is really significant in helping to form the intern, helping the intern to realize the gifts that they didn't even know they had, and to bring them forward into a fully formed minister. So Erik leaves us in a couple of weeks to enter into his final year of seminary studies and also to see the credentialing body for ministers in our association, the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. And as he does, I am so grateful for the journey that it has been this year, for the journey from meeting a congregation who wasn't sure there could ever be an intern as great as Erik Dawson.
You let me know.
Through the inevitable anxieties about working with teenagers and entering into unfamiliar territory with committee work and with the way that our congregation is structured and the way our worship is structured and what people are used to in terms of the charism of the preacher. And to watch Erik rise to each challenge incredibly, to see his soul come forward, to see him embrace his gifts and also readily embrace the places that he had to learn and put them into action immediately. It was really a gift to be part of that process. And you all know that I serve as the supervisor in this process, but there's another important group that helps with this process as well, the folks who are the eyes and ears from the pew, if you will. That's the internship committee. And the internship committee this year was formed of Elaine Craighead, who served as the chair, Gillian Najarian, and Jeff Stote. None of those three could be with us today, but with us today are Tracy Robinson and John Berthrong, who will come forward now and say a few words.
On this kind of group, and it was a great, great experience. Over my 13 years at First Parish, we have been blessed to have many wonderful interns. Each has brought a unique perspective and a rich range of gifts to our community. Erik has certainly more than lived up to this legacy. His time with us has been filled with many, many blessings. We've been inspired by his preaching. He has engaged us with Monday night stories, as well as the ones in front of the offering. Our youth have taught him and learned from him and certainly laughed with him. He joined with Parisa to lead 12 of us on a wonderful spiritual retreat a few weeks ago, the first of what we hope will be many times to come. And of course, he has had many personal chats with many, many of us one-on-one, for which I am personally very grateful. Erik, we have learned from you and with you, and you will always hold a special place in our hearts.
And I wonder what led him to think of a low dive on his last formal preaching occasion with us. I have truly enjoyed and learned from my year of working with Erik. Coming second, basically all I can do is second everything that Tracy has said about the pleasure of this experience. I think what has moved me greatly has been his preaching. As I was listening to the songs that we were singing, I think the words that he has spoken, the ideas that he has struck, the meditations that he has moved in my heart will, like that river that we were singing about, flow with me, through me, and on from me. Because I know that the words that he has spoken here are but a promissory note for those lucky congregations, those lucky people, those lucky souls that he will touch in the future. It has been a privilege and an honor to help and watch him follow his calling and to flow along his way. Thank you, Eric.
We have a small token from this congregation.
And you should probably, your last task for your committee will now be to see if you can get it out without breaking it. This is the kinesthetic part that they don't do in the psychological testing.
Let there be light. Over the past year, you have entrusted me with your hearts. You have supported me with your hands. You haven't really read my blog much, but we'll forget about that. And above all, you have anointed me with your hopes.
And you, Eric, have walked with us faithfully, with deep devotion, always willing to learn and be changed. Soon, sadly, our paths will diverge, and we will part ways.
How I pray that in our absence there will be a greater presence.
And as we carry the gifts of this time that we have shared into our separate paths, we pray that that river that flows through each and all of us will keep us united and flow through us and among us for all the days to come. Let us go in peace, in great celebration of the gifts of ministry within the pews and in Eric's life and future congregations.
And let the people say, Amen.
Our service is ended, and the annual meeting will proceed after the postlude. We'll have a chance to celebrate Eric at the luncheon after